is this?
They can.
Cool.
I don't think we ever tweet out how to join as audience, but people can do that.
Then then we need to start today.
Yeah, I definitely ought to figure that out. So. Let's see.
Just a second.
All right. So how are you doing, Jack?
I'm real good.
What's new with you?
Yeah, I'm working on this TanStack stuff, which has been real good. So yeah, no,
nice.
Good. Yeah.
It's Create TS Router app, right?
Correct. Yeah. So couldn't get Create TanStack app. Somebody already had that. Couldn't get Create TSR app because somebody has that and won't respond. Couldn't get Create TS app because somebody had that. So it's about the closest I could get. Kind of embarrassing though. I mean, like, come on, guys. You're camping on Create TanStack app. Give me a break, man.
I feel you.
Reasonable development.
Part of me thinks though, because I've picked things and named things that eventually I have as a project, and then I just forget.
Yeah, right. Oh, I know for sure. Well, Create TSR app is literally they're like, this is a placeholder. We're camping on this. And
oh, like, really?
Come on, that's not cool. But Create TanStack app actually, I think, was revved recently-ish.
Okay.
So that's maybe okay. But I mean, come on, we're TanStack. Give us our name back.
Yeah.
So you working with Tanner?
Yeah. And it's only got 15 downloads a week. Hey, come on.
Okay, I'm ready to go.
I'm ready to go too, man. Like,
all right, let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right. Hey, welcome back to another episode of JavaScript Jabber. This week on our panel we have Dan Shapir.
Hello from still cold Tel Aviv.
Cold. I just went for a walk in like 30-degree weather. So
it's relatively cold. I mean, it's 50 degrees Fahrenheit or so. So that's really
not cold.
That's like freezing for us.
What? Okay, fine.
All the snow hasn't melted here. I'm Charles Maxwood from Top End Devs, and we have a special guest this week. We have Jack Harrington. Jack, it's been a while.
Yeah, right. Wow. We used to do a podcast together, and now I do my own podcast, and there you go. But it's great being here. It's so nice to see you guys again. And it's great to be here. And here it's weirdly very sunny. We've had a lot of rain lately. Where I'm over in Portland, and it's like 50, which to us is shorts weather.
Right?
Yeah. That's like balmy.
Yeah, kind of like here in the Utah, right?
Yeah.
What can
you have humidity there too. So
in Portland.
Anyway,
tell
it's not that humid there.
Crumbling like fingers and stuff. I moisturize all day.
Well, compared to here, it's humid.
There you go.
Yeah, we live in this desert.
Remind
here.
me not to go anytime soon.
I don't know. The skiing's good.
Yeah, there you go.
But Dan said that Create React app's going away. Is that right, Dan?
It's gone away. It's
gone away.
Well, you can still use it, but it gets a big warning about deprecation and stuff.
You said deprecated, so to me that's going away. But
no, it's definitely going. I mean, yeah, eventually. Yeah.
Well, look, stuff like that. I don't know. Maybe one day it'll be officially EOL'd, but from my perspective, when it's deprecated, you really shouldn't be using it for new stuff.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, there's been better alternatives for a while, but I think the big difference is that like the problem with that we have. Is that there's a lot of old tutorials and stuff that use Create React app. They're still as valid as they were back then. Now, they're talking about like, maybe use state and basic hooks and stuff like that. And those are going to last for a while. And just because they use Create React App in the demo doesn't like distract from that. So that's kind of the problem that folks are having, which is they deprecated this thing, and so now learners, folks who just want to like try out stuff, what are their alternatives? And the alternatives that they were given were like
before we go to
that.
alternatives, maybe it's worthwhile. I'm guessing everybody knows, probably our entire audience, but I still think it's worthwhile to mention what Create React App was or is, it still is, why it was actually needed, what it does for you.
Sure. So Create React App is interesting. The most salient thing to me is that it creates React apps, right? And those are SPA applications. This was done in the very early days. I mean, SSR was around, but this is not creating SSR applications. This is creating the kind of stuff that you'd build. You create a dist file, you'd put that off on S3 or some CDN, and you'd have yourself a site. And it was, very simple stuff, SPA, single page application type stuff. And the other thing that was interesting about Create React App that I had actually forgotten was that it remains a dependency in your application. It doesn't just create the app. It actually like remains a dependency in your application.
Oh yeah, it gets injected into your package JSON.
Oh yeah, and then it actually it will rev your React versions and everything like that going forward. And that was the original promise of Create React App, was to give you it was an actual platform, kind of like Next.js. And the idea was you get on Create React App and you can just keep revving that, and you always keep up to date with React. And that kind of stumbled, I don't know, like 0.16 kind of that in that time, I think.
So it would literally, whenever a new React version would come out, would automatically update your package JSON to use that newer version without even asking you?
No. I mean, it's dependencies. It would handle the React dependency for you. So you'd bump your.
I don't remember. I don't remember behavior like that.
Internally.
Sorry.
Yeah, that was what I believe it did, and that was what folks were complaining about when we talked about like, oh, we've got this drop-in replacement. They're like, oh, well, are you actually replacing that functionality in Create React App? Are you going to handle all of that? It's like, no, we don't do that. Like, we just make an app.
It seems weird. I mean, NPM exists so that it does that stuff for you. Why would you need something else to do that for you on top of NPM?
Well, it's handling all the other things like Webpack and everything else.
Oh yeah, no, I'm talking about
consistency is right.
No, I'm putting Webpack aside for a minute. I'm talking just about what you said about keeping you up to date with React.
Yeah, I would imagine that it as things get released, that it has some internal, way of tracking dependencies. So it's not just React; it's all the other stuff.
It's all the ancillary extra things.
So when you update it, it's saying we know this stuff plays nice together, and so it updates everything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Still would seem to be stuff that should be handled via the package manager rather than something.
Ideally, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's where it kind of like that's. I mean, this thing came out like a decade ago, and I think back then they were trying to compete against an Angular, and Angular was starting to have that CLI, and the CLI was doing that kind of thing where it's taking care of all that funky business for you. So
it did a lot of other things for you too, but yeah.
So this was a nice way of for them to like kind of compete against that. But in the modern context, nobody. I mean, at least for me, nobody wants that. Everybody just wants to maintain their own package stuff and do the revving themselves and have granular control over it.
I always thought that it was primarily about getting the Webpack stuff right. That, properly configuring Webpack.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
That's not trivial.
Right. And when you eject, well, that's the thing, right? There's this whole thing about ejecting from Create React App. And so why do you need to eject from Create React App unless it's actively maintaining stuff for you? Well, what you do when you eject from Create React App is it actually gives you access to all of the stuff that it's maintaining, including like the Webpack config and everything else. And if you look in the Webpack config, it's shockingly complex.
Man.
It was huge. It was crazy.
I quit having nightmares about Webpack, and now you're bringing it back.
So basically, we had this command line tool that people who wanted to start playing around with React and maybe didn't have a lot of experience in single page applications either way
Yeah.
could get up to speed. And as you said, it would configure the bundling for you, that is Webpack. It would download the necessary stuff. It might even keep you up to date on some of the things, and it would create a sample project for you. To be honest, it's been a very long time since I've actually used Create React App myself. Most of the projects that I've been working on, somebody did that a while ago.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But
it was funny. I saw it again for the first time and I was like, oh, I remember this, the spinning React logo on the homepage. Wow, that's what that was. And yeah, so we did kind of a riff on that when we did our thing.
Okay, so talking about your thing. So we said that it's going away. I guess.
Here, I'm going to pop a comment that somebody threw our way. He says, his professor still uses Create React App for teaching React, and he suggested Vite. And it sounds like you've got some other idea of what to do.
No, I agree, actually.
To be honest, before we go there, I have to say that I'm kind of shocked that a professor teaches React.
Really? I mean, a couple of years ago, I would be shocked, but nowadays, like my kid just went through Oregon State, and yeah, the courses had some, kind of recent stuff, and I think there was an actual course on web development in particular, and yeah, sure they would teach React.
Yeah, my kids in junior high
some sort of practical skills.
In junior high and high school, we're doing web development, but I think they were teaching them just the general web APIs for JavaScript. I don't think
that's a good idea.
It's just the universities tend to be elitist in these sort of things, ivory tower and whatnot, and it's not about the practical skills. It's about expanding your mind. So they teach you Java.
Yeah,
because that expands your mind.
They were teaching Java when I went to college.
I won't tell you what they taught when I went to university. Yeah. Anyway, we digress. Going back to the topic at hand. So, like that commenter stated, isn't Vite kind of a replacement for Create React App these days? What's missing?
Okay, so as an educator, I think every little bump in the road from what I'm seeing in my tutorial versus what I'm actually like getting as part of the setup is a problem. And because I'm seeing people would say, oh, your tutorial says change this one line, and this one line is different from what I expect because it's now I do my Create React app or whatever, and I get something else, right? And so when I'm thinking about folks who are going to take those tutorials and would normally be doing like Create React app, if you say to them, cool, just use Vite. Well, one, what Vite command do you use? Because if you just run Vite, you'll actually create Vite app or whatever it is. You'll get like, I don't even know if there is a default, but the default is probably Vue. And so you need to like specify a template, and the template would be React or React-TS, and that would give you React or React TypeScript. And then once you get the app, I'm pretty sure the files are in different locations. Certainly the content is entirely different. And now as a potential learner, right, I've got this huge disparity between where the tutorial is and where this Vite app that I just created is. It looks like an entirely different thing, and it only gets worse if you look at Next.js, because now Next.js, it's not even really a spa anymore. It's now an actual like SSR app.
Well,
and that's a whole thing.
Yeah, it's still a spa. It's
not though. I mean, unless you got to use client one, and that's an old school tutorial is not going to tell you to do that. And even if you do use client, well, it's going to render on both the server and the client, and so you're going to need to do stuff like checking against window and document and all the rest. It's a hassle.
I agree. I was just nitpicking.
Sure.
It's still a spa. It's not client rendered.
It's not right. Yeah.
So it's still a single page application, because at the end of the day, even with Next.js, You can, I guess, kinda make a multi-page application out of Next.js, but it's not really meant for that. It's meant for single-page applications,
Mm-hmm.
but it definitely involves a server.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and by
Although
the
you can
way,
actually, you can build Next.js fairly, and you can build Next.js and build it to static and all that. And that
yeah,
in fact, it actually,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't make any requests to get server side props, or in the app router, if you don't make any fetches or anything like that, or do anything dynamic, it will actually just build you a static app, right?
so yeah, we actually had Rob Lee from Vercel on Monday
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
guest on the show, and I
Mhm.
literally asked him, like, Create React App is going away. What's your answer when people don't want like the full stack experience? And he basically said what you said, that that server that React server components can actually execute at build time, and then you can take the output of that build and deploy it to, let's say, an S3 bucket and have it statically served that way.
Right.
I'd be really surprised though if people are really using that style of setup in anger with Next.js. I'd be really surprised. I mean, if you're
No.
buying into Next.js, you're going to actually use the Next.js way, I guess.
Yeah, you're probably there for SSR to some degree, more or less. I mean, the cool thing with the app router, and I'm not dissing the app router. I mean, the app router is an amazing piece of work, and I've got a course on the app router, and it's incredible, right? Um, but there's all kinds of options around it. Components can be dynamic, can be static, and it can define route by route what's going to be static and what's going to be dynamic, and it's an amazing piece of work. But if you are somebody who's just trying to like learn React or just put together a spa, like it's a lot of stuff that's entirely different from what you've experienced in the past building out a spa. Like
Yeah. I
it's crazy.
I think a lot of this is kind of where people are looking, right? Because I think in a lot of cases, yeah, people are so as an experienced developer, right? Yeah, if I'm gonna go and build something mission critical, yeah, I'm gonna go evaluate. Am I gonna use Next? Am I gonna use this? Am I gonna use that? Right? Before just create React app, get me where I want to go or not. But for I think a lot of people where they're just trying to learn React or trying to pick something up, or hey, I just want to build a web app. What they do is they go to their friend who looks like me and they say, what do I use? And so if I'm the guy that really likes Next.js, then I'm going to tell him to go pick that up because it's great and I love it and it does all the things. And so I think that's where the conversation is what are the trade-offs now between picking Next.js or something else?
There's another point. So I'll give. I've been talking to various people who are building organizational applications, and these are applications that are don't get ranked because they are either wholly internal or maybe they are external but they're behind some authentication, so they're not scanned by Google. Now if you're
Yeah.
building a website that needs to rank, that needs to be indexed, you're
Mm-hmm.
going to need SSR. But for a lot of these internal applications, the guys working on the React stuff, they don't necessarily do anything on the back end. They're connecting directly to RESTful endpoints implemented in Go or Java or
Yep.
whatever, and they're just building the front end, and they don't care about SSR because it's, like I said, it's not that type of an application. And for them, Next.js seems very much like overkill.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm writing down a note to myself because I just got an interesting question this morning about using TanStack Start without SSR.
Actually, that's the interesting point. So when we had Tanner on the show, and we had him as the first guest this year back in January, I literally asked him about that. And what he conveyed to me, or the way that I understood it, that one of the biggest selling points of 10 stack start versus Next.js is that Next.js is backend first.
Right.
Everything starts on the back end, and then some of the stuff happens on the front end.
Yeah.
And 10 stack start, even though it supports that full stack configuration, the whole mindset is front end first.
Right.
And you can reach out to the back end to get stuff, to do stuff, but the architecture is first and foremost on the front end. So with a 10 stack start, you might start with a totally front end type of application and then say, hey, I actually think I need to do some of the stuff on the back end. And then you can add that capability into the application.
Yeah.
Whereas with Next.js, that's where you start, pun not intended.
It gets worse when you bring in like solid stars. So they've also got stars, but yeah, I know what you mean. And the interesting thing was, so this guy was saying exactly that, but he was saying, I don't even need SSR. All I want from start is just API routes and server functions, because I want to have essentially my BFF, right? You're saying you're connecting to Go. Well, what if those things don't have cores, right? You're going to need some sort of BFF to go between your UI and your Go services on the back end, or clean up whatever. We've all done that sort of thing.
You need middleware.
It's basically middleware, right? Exactly. And so he wants the middleware ability, but doesn't want SSR, which I thought was an interesting variant. So I got to go check with the guys and see if there's some way to like hit a flag, sure. Like SSR false.
According to Tanner, that should be the basic approach. So, for example, talking about, and we're kind of digressing off of the original topic, but I think it's worthwhile and interesting. So the way that, their outlook or view on how to work with React server components. So for Next.js, everything starts at the React server component, and the props flow down from the server. So the rendering always starts on the server, right, and then at a certain point in time switches over to the client. What Tanner explained is that in his approach, you invoke server functions. The server functions can respond with some data, which you render on the client, or they can actually respond with virtual DOM, with JSX, as it were, and then that gets directly rendered.
Right.
So
that's the approach. It's not. I don't think 1.0 is going to have that, but it's going to be hopefully a fast follow to like a 1.1, where you can return basically RSC. And then you've got like something on the client that basically allows you to say, cool, I got an RSC payload, and then convert that into VDOM, just drop that in. And that's really, really cool. And I think that's actually like an interesting alternative to the Next.js model. And I believe that's what Remix is going to do. At least that's what they demonstrated at ReactConf. Tanner
indicated that he and the Remix guys had apparently a similar take on how to do these things. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But going back to the topic at hand, so we were talking about the fact that you can use Next.js as a replacement for Create React App. I'm just going to say CRA because Create React App. You can use Next.js as a replacement for CRA, but you probably won't. And that there are a lot of you're going to use Next.js as a Next.js. And which is fine, but and there are a lot of organizations. So first, and there are a lot of people for whom they just want to play with React, and for them Next.js is too much too soon. And there are a lot of organizations that just want to build a client rendered application, and for them a full stack type of a framework is beyond an overkill. It's detrimental to their needs. They don't want to do stuff on the back end. They just want the JavaScript developers to do stuff on the front end.
And because here's a concrete example. If I'm building like a dashboard and I find some, I'm getting asked by product to put up some really cool graph, and the only thing that I can find is this one obscure library that does this graph, and I'm like, yeah, great, awesome, right? And I drop it in my app. In Vite land or in Create React App land, that's probably going to work 100% of the time. It's gonna drop in there just fine. But if you drop that into a Next app, and I've seen this quite a bit actually, those kind of libraries might invoke or might hit document or window unconditionally as part of their setup. And those blow up in SSR because there's no document, there's no window on the server. And so now I've got this awesome thing that I can use, except that I can't because I'm on Next.js, but I'm not using any of the features of Next.js anyway. Right. And so I end up doing that lazy imports or craziness or whatever, or hacking the package. Or,
so you can't assume, just to say, you can't assume that a third-party React library supports SSR.
Right.
You cannot assume that.
Even in 2025. Yes. True.
So and I'm going to pull up another comment by our friend Bharat here, who's on the live stream, but he's saying, so yeah, backend teams create the REST APIs, the front end and mobile, so they don't want to deal with the server stuff, which makes sense. But is that the essential of what we're talking about here, is whether or not people want to worry about SSR or deal with SSR or deal with the server on the back end? Is that the flexibility you lose with Next.js that you might get with something else?
Well, Next.js is going to push you to the end game right away, which is here. You're going to do SSR. You're going to have server functions. You're going to have API stuff. Even if you don't need or want them, you're going to have them, and you're going to have to play in a compatible, sandbox because of those decisions that we made. Whereas hard shift to TanStack here. So TanStack actually has a much smoother migration from going a full-on just SPA app that has a router in it, so you can have multiple pages or routes, whatever, to a file-based router where you define those by file names, and it gets a lot easier. And then into Start, where you can start to add API requests and API endpoints and server functions, so you can actually kind of, as your application grows up and starts to need that stuff, then you can start to bring those things in. And if we can disable SSR, it's an even smoother ramp, because you can still have those kind of funky libraries and stuff, but now you can also still have API endpoints and server functions if you need to have those. So
and I'll say it again: if you're building an e-commerce website, you must have SSR.
Yeah,
because otherwise you won't rank well, you won't perform well, and overall it'll be a bad experience for everybody all around, your users, yourself, and whatnot. If, on the other hand, you're building a dashboard in front that, let's say, even requires authentication, and it's in front of several backend services, there's a good chance that you just don't need SSR. You don't want SSR. SSR will just make your life harder and get in the way.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, and with Next.js, you kind of don't have a choice. You get SSR whether you like it or not.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're like, I was working at Nike for a long time, or 3 years, and our front end teams, they all use Next.js. It was all SSR'd, and then the teams that would manage the CMS stuff, which we drove the whole product catalog as a content management system.
Right.
Those are all 100% SPA, 100% SPA. All the auth was SPA, all client side requests. They went through their own little BFF, but yeah. All
just to clarify, because I'm liking kind of the incremental, hey, we're going to add this feature, we're going to add that feature, right? And so, if you would never get to the place where I have to have SSR, right? It's not public on the web. It's not going to get indexed by Google, right? Then it's nice to have the option. But it also seems to me that if I'm starting a new application, a lot of times I don't want all of the bells and whistles in there. I want to just kind of explore and figure these things out. Yeah. And then what you're saying is, then I can turn around and say, okay, I know that this app does need SSR, right? It is going to be public facing. Maybe it backs up onto Shopify if you're doing e-commerce, or it backs up onto and I've seen people do this, right? Or it backs up onto some headless CMS, right? But I'm thinking, I do need some of these other features. Then I can pull those in once I've kind of gotten the shape of the app figured out, and I can approach it from that end without complicating it with all the other things that, yes, I'm going to eventually need, but right today, I just need to figure out what this thing even looks like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. Yeah. And that's what we're trying to do with this Create TS Router app. So we were saying to folks, cool, CRA is now deprecated, and literally, that was on Friday from the team, and then on Monday we dropped this Create TS Router app, and the idea is it'll give you exactly the same content in the exact same locations, except that it's built on top of Vite and Tanstack Router. So out of the shelf, you get a router built in, which is what a lot of people want to add almost right away to their application.
So basically, it's compatible with Create React App in the sense that it's a CLI tool, that it doesn't require anything on the back end. What it's just totally front end. I think even much of the command line options and switches are the same as Create
Exactly the
React
same.
App,
Yep. Yeah.
and it creates essentially the same or very similar or as close as possible the same file structure.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. The actual like app.jsx file that they tell you, or app.tsx file, is in exactly the same location. It has exactly the same contents. It just happens to be like the main. There's also there's source app, which is your component, and then there's source main, which in the original CRA was basically a little thing that did the like render root and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. This one just adds in Tanstack Router into that, and then makes that app your home route. Yeah,
and also, instead of being built on top of Webpack, it's built on top of Vite because we are in 2025.
right, exactly.
Not
Yeah,
in
no
2015.
more nightmares.
Yeah. And everybody literally that was a lot of the reaction to all the stuff that happened with the deprecation of CRA, and then the follow-up blog, the blog, and then also the documentation that basically says, it kind of alludes to you can use Vite, but our recommended thing is that you use a framework, and the frameworks include Next.js and Remix. But I really felt bad. I knew that there would be a massive pain point here for folks that were trying to learn, or just expecting that their workflow was, hey, I'm going to spin up a spa. I'm going to use Create React App. I know it's not the greatest, but it works for me. I need a replacement. And and there was nobody that was coming out with a replacement like that. And so I was like, cool, let's do it with TS Router because it's a good thing.
We literally had this exact situation where I work. We were starting a new, relatively small project, a React project that had these essential requirements. And I kind of told them, hey, these are the technologies you need to use. You need to use Vite, you need to use, and so forth. And I literally came to them and said, hey, there's this new tool that dropped. It's called Create TS Router app, CTA. Use that.
Call to action. Yeah.
And why mess around? Because they were doing Vite directly, and they ran into all sorts of issues. And of course, they immediately ran into the problem of hey, which router are we going to use, and how are we going to configure it, and whatnot. So I said, hey, just use this.
Yeah. So right away, we supported multiple ways you could do routing. So there's with CRA, you have this you give it the name of the app that you want, my dash app or whatever, and then you can optionally give it a template, and that template would be would generally be TypeScript. And that would give you the TypeScript flavor of CRA. And so what we did with CTA is we have it so template, you could say TypeScript and get exactly the same kind of deal, but you could also do template as file router, and we would give you a TypeScript app, same thing, but defined using routes with a file router. So if you wanted to start moving towards a file routing setup, this is just a really nice segue into that.
So the file router basically means that the router automatically matches your directory structure in terms of the pages that you're using.
Right, exactly. You get a source /source/source/ routes, and then within that, all the files and directories define the structure of your URLs. And different routers do it different ways. Next.js has their syntax for it. It varies between Pages Router and App Router. Remix has 3 different ways you can do it, and TS Router has a couple of flavors, but they're fairly similar.
So for those of our listeners who don't know, again, I highly recommend listening to our episode that we did with Tanner Lindsley at the beginning of the year, where we talked at length about TS Router and why it's so great. The thing that makes it so great is that it's type safe.
Yes.
Which means at the simplest level means that if you put in a wrong route, you'll get a red squiggly
Yeah.
telling you that, and you'll get automatic completion for routes, and it just works. And taking it to the next stage, it also gives you type safe URL parameters or query parameters, so you can actually store state safely in the URL itself, which is, I think, awesome, because that means you can actually copy the URL and send it to somebody, and they will be in the same place in the app. That you don't just share the app, you share your state in the app, which is super useful.
Yeah. And so one of the really and kind of building on that, last week we released a TanStack router for Solid that has exactly the same API surface between the two. Solidified, I guess. And then this week we actually released a CLI update. So Create TS Router app got better. So now you can actually give it framework Solid as part of the command line, and it'll actually build a Solid app with exactly the same context, except with a spinning React logo. It's now a spinning Solid logo, but pretty much the same thing. And then it also has two other really cool new features. One's called add-ons that'll allow you to add on things like Sentry and Clerk and TanStack State or Store to manage the state management, TanStack Query, everybody's favorite React query, a bunch of integrations, which is really cool, and then also some really cool and a cool AI feature.
By the way, I don't know if you do this or not, but you should, when you give developers the option to install TanStack Query, in parentheses you should probably say React Query, because that's the way a lot of people still know it.
Yeah, I know. Actually, like as a description, when you're going through the kind of there's you can either go via the command line, or you can just kind of just get a full on experience where we prompt you for the name and all that. And when you kind of glide over it in that section, it actually says, it's React Query.
So
I know what you mean, though. It's a weird thing, like TanStack Query, but it makes more sense as you start to think about what TanStack is trying to do, which is to have a cross-platform set of libraries that work across React and Solid and Vue and all that. It makes more sense to think about.
For sure. By the way, you should add another option right now, which is React Scan.
I know. I was gonna do a fast follow this morning and add React Scan. It's really cool. Aiden's doing some great stuff.
We actually had Aiden on the show recently as well.
Yeah,
we're having all the cool people on the show, and we really need to get Ryan Carniato on the show again.
We need to get Ryan back for sure.
Yeah, I've been speaking with him. He's kind of busy, but I'm sure we'll find a way.
Gotta say, we're getting a little bit of a PNW brain trust up here. We got Aiden, starting to get some cool folks coming up to the PNW.
Yeah, Ryan's always busy, but he's always such a delight just to talk to.
Oh my God, he knows everything. He's
smart.
He's gone into every single framework, understands them in detail. Yeah.
Oh
he's Mr. He's the CEO of Signals and Mr. Frameworks.
Yeah, I did want to kind of ask about with Create TanStack or TS Router app. Man, I'm gonna trip over that every time I say it. It's a mouthful.
Wish we could get that Create TanStack app.
Right, but so just kind of walk me through. Okay, looking at stuff, I decide this is what I want to use. What's the experience like as I build my app, right? So I just use the command line to create the app, and then as I build it and as I advance, what does that look like?
Yeah, so the command line at this point is a straight just builder, and then it's passive, it's gone. You're on your own at that point to add new stuff. If you haven't, so that's why I kind of added that add-on stuff. Is we wanted to just make it really easy to just set up. If you're going to use Shad CN, for example, right? So many people want to do that. I just wanted to add an ability to say, hey, I want Shad CN, and it automatically installs Tailwind, automatically installs Shad CN, and gets you up and running, and you're good to go.
With Shad CN, don't you also need to say which Shad CN components you want to use?
You do that later. You'd say, you use their CLI to add components, but the app that is created is compatible with their
I got you.
Thing. Although it is the Canary build, because the app is on Tailwind V4, and only the Canary build of Shadcn is currently supporting that.
Yeah, that's another person we need to get on. Is we need to get what's his name? From Tailwind
guy. Oh yeah. Right.
I feel bad I'm forgetting his name.
He's real fun. I talk with him over at ReactConf. He's a hoot.
Yeah. But yeah. So literally, it kind of auto ejects you to use the parlance from Create React App.
A lot of folks were like, oh, it by default ejected. I'm like, yes. Yeah.
So then I decide I want these other things, right? So it's like I didn't put in 10-stack query now, and so now I want it. It's pretty easy to just add in, and it just runs and is happy.
Yeah, I mean, you could, if you wanted to just see kind of how it's done, like you could go up and spin up another app in another directory and add that in and be like, oh, okay, I see where it's basically two files. And then what we do is, this is actually kind of it was driven by me really, but when we install something like React Query or 10-stack query, however you want to say it, certainly we do the infra stuff, which is to go and build a provider, build a client, and then put the provider on it. But we also build a demo page so you can see how it's used in either React or Solid. But everything that we do that's a demo, anything, we'll go and put demo in the file name, and that way later on, if you're just like, hey, I would just want to sweep it out of my app because I don't need that, then you can just literally like do a find demo star xargs rm and it's gone. And you can do it to like change it to the routes or like header, just remove them from a header too, but it's very, very clean. I want to make sure that like as we added like boilerplate code in, that it was identified solidly as like, this is boilerplate.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I hate it when boilerplates are like kind of integrated all over the place, and it's like the mess. Ugh.
By the way, one more point about 10-stack router. I believe that in most cases you will want to use the file-based routing. Is that correct?
Yeah, it does auto splitting of bundle splitting, so that's a nice advantage right there.
So unless you have a good reason, that's the way that you should probably want to go.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's not the default because of the CRA connection and us wanting to like really give you that CRA experience out of the box. But I would strongly recommend starting with a file runner. But it's not a hard migration. Literally, it is, it's a couple lines of config and then just moving some files around.
Yeah, but why not start the right way?
Yeah, for sure. But I'm just saying, like, it's not like you're stuck. If you create like a code router app, you're not stuck at that. You can actually work your way up the chain, which is not going back to the Next.js thing. That is not an option there. It's like you start at the end. It's you start at the most advanced setup.
For sure.
So one thing I'm wondering is, it seems like you're talking about it like you're contributing to create CTA. I'm just going to say CTA, and then I won't get lost. You're contributing to CTA. You're pretty involved. You've got some courses. So what's your relationship with 10-stack? Are you working for them? Or are you just a fanboy? Or I contribute to whatever? Or I'm just curious. Like, where do you land here?
It was a New Year's resolution of mine to get more intimately involved in open source. Like I was noticing as I was going from conference to conference, you kind of get like the influencer folks and the talkers, and then there was the OSS folks, and I'm like, I kind of groove and vibe more with the OSS folks, and I want to be part of a project like that. And the project that spoke to me was 10-stack. So I started, I guess, really just in beginning of the month, it'd be kind of like, hey Tanner, can I contribute on this? And he's like, cool, yeah, we got some docs. So I went through the docs and all that, and then it really picked up when on, I guess, Friday a couple weeks ago, I was like, okay, we need a replacement for CRA that gives you a CRA style experience. And I pitched it to Tanner, and I'm like, and he's like, okay, yeah, build it. And so literally I built it in like 1.0, or it was 0.1 in like 3 hours. And then he's like, that's awesome, let's go. And that's it. I mean, basically I was working on it pretty much almost full time last week, which is probably not great because I don't really get paid all that much. But Yeah, like adding it was really fun adding in that add-on stuff, the AI integration
Your wife
stuff.
is a
That was really
saint.
fun. Our kids out of school, they're off on their own, an apartment or whatever. And, she's got shows to watch and everything. I can just like hang out and like code. And I'll code a lot when we're watching TV. And I was like, wait a second, who are these people again? Like, you haven't been paying attention. You have no idea. Who cares? Like, whatever.
Now, what is CTA built on, by the way?
Oh, what do you mean? Like
you coded it. What did you code it on?
It's TypeScript. It's a Node package. It uses Commander for the ARG processing. It uses Clark for prompts. It seems to be the new hotness, and I agree because it is really good. Actually, it's really great. And it uses EJS for a lot of the templating. So we have a lot of like templates where our files, like depending on the combinatorics of what you've asked for, code router, file router, this and that, and Tailwind versus not versus all that kind of stuff. We need like special like changes in the actual like code that we write. So we use EJS for that. And then just recently I added the MCP stuff. So the MCP server and then also Express. So
you mentioned MCP, and I think that's a really cool thing to talk about.
Yeah, I'm really psyched about it.
So I don't think you know what that is, Chuck.
Nope.
Okay, well, remember Tron? It's the master control program. No, just actually, I thought that was what it was when I first heard it, because I remember like way back, I don't know, like late 2024, Anthropic came up with this idea of this model context provider. So it's a standard that you can write to, and there's two different protocols, and I'll get to that in a second, that you can then give Claude. At the time, the Claude desktop was the only thing that supported this, but you could tell Claude desktop, hey, cool, I've got this MCP server over here, and that MCP server will give you a set of tools. And then anytime, then there's self-identifying tools, and then anytime it wants to do something like, you maybe give it a tool for like change the hue lighting my house, or make coffee, or go through this file system. Right. Actually, most of it was like database integrations early on was like kind of, okay, here's a bunch of tools for a Postgres database. I can list tables, I can run a query, all that.
Yeah, and I've been playing with building tools. I just didn't know the term, but
so
for other APIs
packages up those tools as well as resources in a really nice interface.
So question about that. So is MCP mostly about exposing capabilities, or is it mostly about expanding the model itself, like with domain specific knowledge that might not be contained within the model?
B, the latter, I would say. Yeah.
So typically
it's expanding the reach of the model, usually into your own space, because you're running the server like literally on your own machine. And so it's actually like it has access to everything inside of your intranet.
So the model was
maybe not Claude would have access to, obviously.
So the model was original. Sorry, Chuck, just 1 second, because I want to better understand this. So the model was essentially trained on some global data, whatever, but you want it to ask questions that are pertinent to your data, but obviously your data is not part of the model,
right?
So MCP helps you do that by you expose your data to the model through this API. Obviously, it's totally private because your data doesn't become part of the actual model. It's just an extension to that model.
Exactly. Yes, 100%. And the way that you do that is you give it tools, which are really just functions. Those functions can take parameters, right? And so you had two different ways of doing this in the past. It used to be that you just create a massive system prompt, like, hey, I want you to give product recommendations for our products, like you're an e-commerce company. You take literally all your products and drop them into the system context and be like, here are our products. When you recommend them, here they are. But let's just say that you've got a massive product catalog. Like, how do you handle that? Like, so what you're doing, you could give the AI a search tool. Hey, given these parameters, sneaker size or whatever, give me back a list of products. And then it's a much better communication with the AI. The AI can then go, oh, okay, I see that the person wants like size 11 shoes for running. I'm going to run your search tool and you're going to give me back JSON with a list of products. And then I'll be able to go and give them recommendations.
Yeah, it's in the AI parlance. What you're talking about is retrieval augmented generation,
RAG.
And so RAG, and so essentially, yeah, it's smart enough to be able to retrieve the data and then essentially augment its own response with what it got or what it retrieved from the other end. Yep. But when you're talking about tools, a lot of times too, it's here's a function to update my Google Calendar, or here's a function to send an email, and so it's both. When you're talking about tools,
and you can also do queries,
right. And so, yeah, I mean, and there are other RAG tools, but yeah, this is one way of doing RAG, but it does both. You can add capabilities as well. So if it can touch an API somewhere, it can make things happen. And that's what you're talking about, like with your Hue lights or your other home automation stuff, or, stuff over the internet where you need to make things happen. It's not retrieving data necessarily anymore. It's actually causing an effect somewhere and doing a thing.
Yeah.
And MCP is basically a standard way to achieve this functionality.
Right. So there's two different methods that you can use for building an MCP server. For communicating. The protocol underneath would be two different kind of transports. One is standard IO. So basically, you run this app, and then you start, literally standard in, you give a JSON blob saying, this is my request for a tool or whatever. And then standard out, it responds with whatever the data is, which is cool up to the point where you're like, wait a second, how do I actually, if I'm writing my MCP server on standard IO, how do I debug this thing? Like, I usually use standard in, standard out for my debugging. Like, so I guess you limited to standard or something, but like, I just find that kind of janky. I've never been like
Unix.
a huge fan of this. Yeah, right, exactly. And then the other way, what I think is actually a little bit cleaner, is they have an SSE transport or server set events transport, where you're basically running a server. Now you have a URL, and the Claude Desktop, if that's the MCP agent that you choose to use, would then connect to that URL, and then you can talk via a continuous connection using server sent events. Yeah, I like that one a little bit better, but I think for a lot of folks, the standard IO version is nicer, because then, like, Claude would be it will just run your app or your little command line app for you, handle all that, and then kill it when it's done, that kind of thing. Whereas if you use the SSE approach, you actually have to run a server, and then you give it the URL. So it's kind of hassle.
It's basically you're building a node. You're using Node.
Yeah. So in this case, the fun thing we did with Create TS Router app was, now you can put --MCP, or now even this morning --MCP-SSE, and it will run an MCP server, and then the tools that it gives the MCP agent, the thing using MCP, are things like create a Tanstack Router app and list all of my available add-ons and all of that. And so if you've got an IDE that is integrated, that has MCP integration, and nowadays Windsurf and Zed and Cursor amongst them all have MCP integration. Cursor in particular has an integration for both SSE and also standard IO. I think Windsurf only supports standard IO, and I don't even know what Zed does. I don't even whatever. They get to like a Rust thing for it. I'm like, I ain't got time for that. But it works conceptually. It works, but it's really cool. So basically, what you can do now is you can go into your Cursor, bring up the agent mode panel, and say, I want to create a Tanstack Router app, and it should, do tic-tac-toe or whatever. And you can literally see it, like, it makes the calls to ask for, what are my capabilities, and makes the call to make the app. And then it starts editing the files in place. And you're like, dang, this is like V0, but like in my cursor. Like it's just right. I don't even have to leave. I can just go and make apps right away. And it's funny because like, yes, it is teaching it like new tricks. Like the old Claude doesn't know about TanStack. The old Claude doesn't know like MPX. Like when you try to add ShadCN components, it still tries to use ShadCN-UI because that's what it's trained on, even though now we use ShadCN. Thank you for that. Even though
you might say
the same command, but whatever.
So within, let's say, cursor, you might say, give me a new React application called such and such that has these pages using Tailwind, using ShadCN. I also need a single sign-on, and I want to deploy it there.
Yeah.
And enter, and it
starts building it out. Yeah, it's really cool.
Then opens within cursor, and you're ready to go.
Yeah, crazy.
It might even work.
I mean, you're already in cursor, so yeah, you created an app within your within your system. Yeah, and it actually it has a decent chance of working.
Yeah, I've just found the AI models, they're getting better, but they're still kind of hit or miss sometimes. So, but it'll get you a ways down the road at the very least, right?
Yeah.
So.
But in this case, well, you can either tell it and have the app do this such and such, in which case it will start writing the app, or you can just get the basic skeleton and you've avoided dealing with command line switches.
Right. And then you can continue on. You can create another session with the agent and say, well, now that my app's set up, now go and add this and that and the other thing, and it'll start doing that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very.
It's really cool.
Scary cool.
Yeah. And I was kind of surprised by that one too. It was like, there's been two things where we've done stuff that I was surprised that other people haven't. The one was, CRA being deprecated. Like, why didn't Vite come up with a template that was a CRA template? I don't even know. Like, why?
Well, I think I told you. I think we talked about it. I think the main issue that people forget is that Vite was created by
Evan You.
And Evan You is about Vue, not about React. So
right.
Yeah. But there's marketing, right? I think that marketing is underplayed in our space, so particularly when folks who are building their own libraries and stuff, they kind of think that like the tech is everything. Like, I'm going to make this awesome library and it's going to do some amazing stuff. And people are just, if you build it, they will come kind of thing. And no, you actually have to market stuff. And so understanding marketing opportunities is really important. When I saw like that CRA deprecation, I'm like, this, and in fact, this is the words that I told Tanner. I'm like, this is a moment. You got to get after it in that moment. And when people are starting to talk about, well, what do I do? It's like, okay, instead of just saying, well, use Next.js, which is kind of Looney Tunes. No, here you go. Here's a viable solution that has exactly all you need to do is change one word. Instead of create React app, you just say create TS Router app, and you're good to go.
And are you seeing adoption?
Oh yeah. Yeah. We saw, I think the original solid router create module is at TanStack/create router. And I think it had, when I looked last time, it was like 1,500 downloads per week was its average. And this tool, create TS Router app, in its first week had about 1,800. So that's great adoption. That's like right off the bat right there.
So right off the bat, you more than double the downloads.
Yeah. And now the cool thing is, because we added Solid, and Ryan Carniato came in and said that now this is his, like, this is the builder that he's been waiting for. Like, now we're going to pick up the Solid folks too. And I'm digging it. I think this is really great.
Yeah, for sure. That's really awesome. What I wanted to ask something and escape.
It's definitely the most popular open source thing I've ever been involved in. So I'm really happy that, like, the first time I went to the plate, I swung and got maybe a double, or a triple.
It's all about the timing.
It is. It really is. I think the last time I hit something like this was the compiler. The React compiler came out. The team gave me access about a week before it came out, and I spent that week actually trying it out, building a video around it, and that video did super well, because it was kind of like, it dropped on the day that it
Mhm.
was released, and folks were like, "Ooh, this is my." In fact, I think even Prime was like, "This is the official release React video." I'm like, no, it's not, but like, whatever, fine.
Let's also, you just make awesome videos.
Oh, thanks,
I've
man.
said it
Mhm.
before. I said it again. I really enjoy watching your content.
Yeah. Well, I released one about React Scan first thing this morning, so go check that out because Aiden's doing some amazing stuff
Oh
over there.
yeah, like I said, we actually had him on the show.
Is that on a YouTube channel
That's on
or?
my that's on the
Okay.
Blue Collar or that's on Jack Harrington YouTube channel. And yeah, actually just yesterday he released a new 0.2 version that has some really cool stuff in it. It's got the
Yeah,
ability to do like a notification
it's what's
system.
funny. So I
Yeah.
was speaking with him on the show, and I was telling him, you should do this, you should do that, and he was like, oh, I'm taking notes. So I'm wondering if some of my suggestions actually made it into this new version. I'll need to go and check.
Possibly one of the more intriguing ones, and maybe this was a you thing, was that now it will actually build a prompt that has all the information that it has about like why this is re-rendering or whatever, and then you can literally take that. There's a copy button, paste that into a Claude or a ChatGPT, and maybe Claude will help you figure it out, like
No,
why that's happening.
I didn't suggest that. I just
Okay,
basically
that's a good idea
suggested.
anyway.
I basically suggested that within the tool you could click on things and get additional information.
Oh yeah, no, you can definitely do that.
Yeah, so previously you couldn't.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah, now you can like lock into a component and see why is that, and then force a whatever it is to force a render that you don't want, and it'll tell you, oh, the reason that particular component is re-rendering is because this hook, in there fired, and that is just super cool.
That sounds super handy.
Yeah, well, to be fair, this information was previously already available within the React tool, developer tools. So it's not like you couldn't get at this information before. It's just that Aiden is making this information much, much more accessible and more actionable as a result.
Yeah. And now it's also, he's into slower components as well. So it's not just avoiding excessive re-renders or unnecessary re-renders. It's also, hey, your FPS dropped, and now we can actually tell you why. It was this component. It was really, taking too long. And yeah, it's just great.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Like I said, we had him on the show. I recommend our listeners checking that episode out as well, and also looking at your video.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you. I now remember what I wanted to ask you. I'm just curious. What's your own personal IDE of choice these days?
I've just recently switched back from Windsurf to Cursor. And that was primarily around the MCP integration. The MCP integration into Windsurf just was a little kind of janky. Like it is just like literally, if you got the config file wrong, or your server or your MCP server fell over, you just get this like blank white panel that was like, boom, couldn't deal, kind of thing. And the MCP integration into Cursor is at least marginally more robust. But I gotta tell you, like I've been talking with other folks about this, and it's like I just don't get. Like I understand as an investor why these companies would want their own IDEs, but from a technical perspective, these could just be plugins. And Codium was just a plugin. Like everything is there, but like, is it just that your investors are like, come on, man, I'm going to give you $150 million, so you're not going to build an app? Like,
well,
what? Like, do you really need a forked VS Code?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Whether there's anything that they do which could not have been done with a plugin.
And I actually think the integration is poor. Like as an example, like the whole setting system in VS Code, I believe, is extensible, and yet if I go into Cursor, they've got their own additional setting system, which is totally non-standard. It doesn't actually show up in the command panel. You can't like say bring up Command Shift P and then say like add an MCP server. They don't integrate at that level. It's just kind of like this kind of like not particularly well integrated integration, and yet they forked VS Code to add it. I'm like, God.
Right.
Well, To be honest, I'm still using VS Code, and I'm hardly even using Copilot.
Wow. Okay.
I'm old school.
Yeah, I've been using Cursor lately, and I've been pretty happy with it.
Yeah, the tab stuff. The tab when Cursor came out with the tab completion, that was like, whoa, that's next level.
What do you mean by tab completion?
Well, so as you're editing, it's trying to figure out what you're doing, and then it just literally says, "Oh, I got a completion for you. Here it is. Here's kind of a preview of it. Hit tab, and you'll get it." And it just seems to be like spookily good at understanding what I'm trying to do. Like if I'm changing, I don't know, I'm adding some demo data or something like that, I'll add like one example, and it'll be like, "Oh, here's 5 more." And you're like,
I wish I
great.
was writing that amount of code right now. I think I told you that the current project that I'm struggling with is trying to add TypeScript into a huge legacy web application, and it's really tough going for me.
Well,
yeah, but you'd be surprised. Like if you actually, like you mentioned this, and I mentioned that like you probably want to extricate the code into its own package and then upgrade it. But like if you're doing that kind of work of like, oh, I've got these 15 functions, they all take the first, they all take a parameter, which is, I don't know, whatever options or whatever is their first parameter. You fix it on the first one, and it's like, hey, if you hit tab, I'll just fix all other 14
I was
for
gonna
you.
say,
do you want me to do that? And you're like, well, yeah, I guess. Like, just do my work for me.
What do you have really to lose? Great. You've got
Git. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's
the
thing.
The other thing I've seen is like if I'm changing the name of a function or a method, or like you said, changing the signature, anything like that, it goes in and it says, "You want me to fix like everything that uses this?" I mean, it's like, so.
Let me think about
blowing.
That
it's like, oh, good.
Well, yes, you could do that for me. And it's like it is the Copilot that you wanted. It's just really good for that. Really, really good.
I'll give it a try then.
Yeah, and it is fast. Like I was actually talking to the folks behind this, and so there's the side panel that uses like Claude or DeepSeek or whatever, and does more of the.
I almost never touched that, to be honest.
Right. That's when he asks for like the long sort of things, and then there's a tab integration, which is at least on Windsurf, it was their own custom LLM, and I'm guessing that it's probably the same for Cursor, and it is wild fast.
Well, there's a reason NVIDIA is worth what it's worth.
Yep.
Yeah. DeepSeek, I don't know if it's running locally. My guess is, yeah, probably not.
Yeah, but you still got to train the models.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. And as we saw with DeepSeek, right? One thing is training, and another thing is actually, running it and doing hyper performant caching and things like that.
Right.
And so there's a lot of ground to be made up to run it locally.
Yeah, well, and that's the chink in the armor that DeepSeek exposed. I mean, if they're what we've been told about it is honest, is that they didn't need the big fat GPU to do it, or the set of GPUs. I don't know, but at the same time, if we can get away with training models without that, then maybe NVIDIA isn't as valuable. But still, I mean, the things that we can do with AI these days is just.
No, it's beyond that. We are a Chinese attack away from AI being delayed by a decade. What I mean is if China decides to go for Taiwan, there goes AI.
Yeah.
Unless indeed something like DeepSeek can work around the GPU shortage that will likely arise.
Yeah, that's why we needed the CHIPS Act, was to go in, but the fabs are the issue. And the fantastic book that I read last year, I think, called Chip Wars, which is all about like the evolution of the chip, and the fact that we now live in this amazingly fragile ecosystem where there's literally one country in the world, I think it's like Denmark, where they build the machines that are capable of actually like doing the printing on and the lithography, and it's literally that one company. Like nobody else in the world makes those.
We're totally digressing, but it's
we are, but it's fascinating.
It's shades
but it impacts all of us.
It's shades of the Bronze Age collapse. Do you know about that? What the Bronze Age collapse was?
No.
Have you heard? So back in like the 12th century BC, they had this very sophisticated ancient world. You had Egypt, and you had the Assyrian empires, and Babylonia, and the Hittites, and whatnot.
Oh yeah, I
And
played my
then it
civilization.
and then it all collapsed within something like a century. The whole world more or less came crumbling down. The Minoan Mycenaean cultures, for example, in Greece, they died. It took 400 years for them to get writing again.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, it's like the
Well,
fall of
so
the Roman
how did this have to do with copper?
no, it had to do with the sophisticated network of commerce that when they started to fall, they fell like dominoes.
Yeah.
So basically, you think about the modern world, where everything is interconnected, where like a pencil gets made in like parts with 5 different countries or something like that. You're thinking, if you pull one country or one domino, one falls, if it's a sufficiently large domino at least,
Yeah.
the entire system can collapse. And
Yeah.
anyway, we totally digress. Going back to
Yeah.
CTA,
Well,
you're still so we talked about this fantastic AI integration that's built in. So now if you're using an AI, by the way, you can't get this functionality within VS Code with Copilot. They don't have support for that yet.
I don't think so. I Googled around for Copilot and MCP, and I didn't find that they had any integration currently. But I would expect. I mean, this is like an arms race here. You got Microsoft going, and they're constantly adding new stuff on Copilot and kind of compete.
Yeah.
So I think actually Copilot does have now the tab completion stuff. So I would expect that MCP wouldn't be far behind.
Cool.
I'm glad that it's actually like there's an awesome MCP GitHub, as you usually have for this sort of thing, like with a list of all the potential servers, and it's growing fast. The MCP environment.
I did just a quick Google search, and I did find a VS Code MCP server extension.
Oh, there you go. Well, okay.
I don't know how far that gets you down the road, but
right, because Copilot itself has extensions, which was Microsoft's original answer pre-MCP. So I wonder if they're putting this is like a shim to basically connect the GitHub's Copilot extension mechanism to an MCP server.
I don't know.
Yeah. So
good luck debugging that one.
What's the version of CTA? Is it like official? It's obviously we were talking about download, so it's officially released. But what's the version around it?
It's currently 0.42. So yeah.
So that counts as alpha, beta.
I would say that the main part of it, like what just builds an app, is fully released. That's cool. But the add-ons and the AI stuff, I'm still getting some I'm getting bug reports, which is great. Some folks are finding that there's issues. I was running into one just this morning where folks are like one part. The ShadCN add-on actually runs the ShadCN init as part of the setup process, and folks are seeing some issues with that. And I think it was primarily around like older Node versions, things like that. So
what might be awesome if maybe it's already in your plans, if people could add add-ons without having to involve you.
Yes. Yeah. So the long range thing here, there's two big things that I want to go after, and I don't know if it's going to fit into Create TS Router app or it's just going to be part of like something that's different. But the idea is to kind of work on the ShadCN model, where ShadCN now has this thing called blocks, and I've actually talked with the ShadCN guy, and he's totally on board with this. But if you like take a ShadCN app and or an app that has ShadCN in it, and you say like npx ShadCN at latest add, and then you could normally do like button or input or one of those, but you can give it a URL, and that URL points to a JSON blob that has like all of the information. Here's the files that you need to put in, where they need to go. Here's the packages you need to add, all that stuff. And I actually built an app that makes it really easy to build these JSON Delta files. But the idea is like if I'm a clerk or whatever, I can just go and build like a start setup.json file, and then you just do npx shadcn. Here's my URL, start setup, blah blah blah, and it goes and drops all those files down. It'll tell you if it's going to overwrite files. It'll add all the package JSON stuff. It'll change all the CSS variables and everything. And now you've got an integration for, I don't know, Clerk or whatever it is, right? And I thought, that, man, that's cool. That's really cool. And it does exactly what Dan was saying, which is basically it opens up the door for anybody to go and make these add-on templates. And that was fascinating.
It's kind of scary to an extent. You don't know where your template is coming from.
Yeah, but I mean, how many times, maybe you don't do this, but like how many times have you gotten instructions for installation that are like, curl this URL into my shell, and it's like,
pipe to shell,
pseudo curl.
I don't know, right? Or pseudo curl, and you're like, I don't know what you're doing, but I trust you. And it totally could be malware. But at the end of the day, if you use Git, just, if you're going to do that, if you're going to say npx shadcn, just make sure that you're on a clean branch, right? Like you're not like there's no existing work or anything. And then you can just be like, well, Git status, like what did you change? And you can literally see like, here, I added this file here.
Shadcn is a huge topic that's beyond the scope, certainly of the time we have left, because I do have, look, I really like on the one hand, I really love the headless approach.
Oh, yeah.
But on the other hand, I'm really wary about the fact that it's literally embedding code in your project rather than taking the package approach. Because then I keep thinking, what if a new version comes out?
Yeah. Have you looked at, well, one, they do have kind of a solve for that. But two, have you actually looked at the code that it's putting in?
No, to be honest, I have not.
I think you'll be a lot better if you look at the code, because the code is really, like in most cases, it is a very light wrapper around a Radix component. It basically just says, here, use this Radix component, which is headless, and here are the classes that you want to put on it. And then
so the Radix component itself is still an external component.
Exactly, and it is big, and it's doing all the work of all the I18N and the accessibility and all the rest of it. So it really is. If you were to go and use like a Radix in your app, you'd probably be building these files this way. That's how I look at it. And again, like it's so cool. Like that whole infrastructure of blocks is so cool for like an infrastructure. Like I always look at like my past experience and I'm like, what would I do if I was using this at Nike, right, or at Walmart Labs where I've worked in the past? And I've been on infra teams at those companies, and it is so cool that as a Nike can go and create like a internal GitHub repo that has those JSON files for like our version of a button and our version of an input. And then instead of just doing, shadcn add button, you use shadcn add a URL for our button, and you get all of our styling and all of our stuff as opposed to that, which I think is just super cool.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
So that's one thing we want to do. Oops, sorry.
I was just going to, I have one more question, then I think we need to get a picks, but go ahead and finish what you're saying.
Well, I was saying that ability to have external templates and then also to do those add-ons, that's what we'd be looking to do next when it comes to this TS router stuff. So, yeah.
So, related to that and, the things that you would like to do. So is version 1.0 just going to be a stable version of what you have now, or is it going to include some of this stuff, or are there other things that you want to see in it?
I don't know. I think it's stable as is. I know that, like, I guess we could bump it to 1.0. It's fine. But I'm just enjoying getting feedback from folks. I think that's one of the cool things. We were kind of like, before this happened, we were talking about that shadcn block system and just kind of hypothesizing about it. And having done this has really helped inform what that needs to be. And it needs to be, unfortunately, a lot more complex, because there's multiple ways that you can build an app. There's multiple places that code can go, and so it's really helping. Like the existence of Create TS Router app is kind of helping inform the next generation of TS Router app that will allow this ability to create like public integrations or you have your own custom integrations, your own custom templates. I really want for people to be able to say, hey, I've built my app, I've set it up the way that I want it, it's got all the stuff that I need in it for any time. I want to literally go and just like frost this as a template, And then next time I want to build an app, I just want to use that. And but it would be an active template where the versions would change and that sort of stuff. So that's where I kind of want.
What has Jack frozen for you too?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I'm back.
No, I do have one final question on my end before we go to picks.
What are picks, by the way, just so you know?
I remind you, I don't know if you had it when you were on the React
Roundup.
Yeah,
Roundup.
we did.
Okay.
It's basically shouting out your whatever you want to shout out.
Okay, cool. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So my question is about the deployment story. Is there a deployment story? Like if I want to deploy to Netlify or to Vercel or to AWS, is that part of CTA, or do I need the TanStack start for that? Like, what's the story around deployments?
So Netlify is a partner with TanStack, and we have a pretty early days add-on for Netlify in the package that basically just goes and kind of sets up, adds a little bit of deployment information to the README. It really doesn't do all that much, but that's one thing I definitely want to do is start working with Netlify to see if we can strengthen that to the place where if you build a straight SPA that can be just statically deployed, then we'll set it up that way. And if you build a start app, then we'll go and set up your Netlify so that it'll actually go and run a server and give you that SSR feel and all that.
Start kind of has it built in, doesn't it?
I don't think so. Maybe it does.
I think it does. I would check with Tenor. I think one of the key things about meta frameworks or full stack frameworks is the deployment story.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, you expect like 3 things from a full stack app, or maybe 4 things, depending how you count. You expect bundling, you expect routing, and you expect deployments.
That's 3 things. Where's your 4th?
Well, 4th, I was hesitant about the 4th.
SSR, APIs.
It's SSR.
Yeah, okay. But I mean, there's really 2 different things, right? If you're building a static app, then that is one type of deployment. You can go and deploy out to S3 or CDNs or whatever. And then there's another level of deployment when it comes to deploying.
Yeah, that's why I was
SSR
hesitant
app.
about SSR, because SSR is like half of it is part of the bundling story and half of it is part of the deployment story.
Yeah.
And half of it is part of the routing story. So there are 3 halves to SSR.
But I don't want to bag on. Again, I have a course, ProNext.js. You go check it out if you're into that, and it's great. And we do talk about deployments, but I gotta say the easiest way to deploy Next.js is and probably always will be Vercel. And
obviously.
And if you try to deploy it on like a Docker or an SST, I mean, it's not easy. It's not easy, particularly if you want to really use the really like cutting edge features like the ISR stuff or any of that. Like it's a lot. Lee Rob had a really good video going through it, and it's not trivial.
Cool. Well, I'm done on my end.
Cool. Well, let's do picks.
Awesome.
Dan, do you want to get us started with picks?
I'm really hesitant about my pick today. I'll be intentionally brief. I thought about talking more at length, but I'll be intentionally brief. Today was a really sad day in Israel. The country kind of stood still because today it was the funeral of the Bibas family. I don't know if you've heard about the story. I don't want to go into the details because I don't think it's appropriate in this context. I'll just mention that the mother and the 2 babies were murdered while in captivity, and the bodies were finally returned, and today they were buried. Everybody basically, a lot of people wore orange because the 2 babies were redheads. And so they kind of were known for that, and the whole country just came out and paid the respects and so forth. Sorry, that's my unfortunate pick for today.
All right. I don't want to follow that, but I'm gonna go
I
for
don't
it.
want to follow that either.
This is not the first time I've been doing it recently.
Right.
This is not. We talked about this, Jack. This has not been a good year.
Yeah, no, I feel.
Well, 2024 was a really unfortunate year.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead with the card game first. I need to just make a list so I know whether or not I've picked these games. Because I do a board game pick every time.
Oh, awesome.
And I'm not sure if I picked this one or not. But it's one that I played recently with some friends, and I might have picked it last week, and if I did, or the last episode, and if I did, I'm sorry. It is the Groundhog Day game. So if you've seen the movie Groundhog Day,
Who hasn't?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
My sister was born on her birthday was Groundhog
We
Day,
see it, and then we go to bed, then we wake up and we see it again.
Right.
Yeah.
So the card game is based on the movie.
Oh, neat.
And the idea is that you go through each day and you're trying to have that perfect day, right? So that you can get out of the time loop.
Oh, yeah.
And the way that the game is played, so Board Game Geek weights it at 1.22, which means it's a pretty simple game that you kind of pick up and play. I could play this with my 9-year-old, and she'd be fine playing it. But you are dealt a hand of cards, and then it's kind of everybody jumps in and plays when they think it's appropriate. So there are no turns; they're just rounds. And you have gray cards, which are worth 0 hearts. You have blue cards, which are worth 1 heart. You have orange cards, which are worth 2. Yellow is worth 3, and red is worth 4.
I'm guessing you need to get all the hearts to win, or get a lot of hearts to win.
Yeah, so to have the perfect day, you have to have all red cards on your day. And they're all numbered. And so you can only play a number that is higher than the last number played in the day. And there are 7 cards in a day, or 6 cards in a day. And so you deal out the cards, and then everybody starts. So initially you're playing all your gray cards or blue cards, because each day has to be better than the last day in hearts. And so, and you can't talk at all about what you've got in your hand. So we're ribbing each other, but we're not discussing the game when we're playing, me and my buddies. But anyway, so that's essentially the game. Some of the yellow cards unlock red cards that then get shuffled into the deck each round, and you get fewer cards each round. And so, every time we've played it, it's taken us 5 or 6 rounds to beat it. I don't think we ever lost, but we're all experienced board game people. So, we did kind of discuss strategy before we started playing, but that was it. And anyway, it's a fun game.
Yeah,
you're kind of guessing. You're basically guessing, especially on the round where you want to start playing red cards, because you just don't play them until you think you have enough among all of you to play it out. But then somebody has to guess that everybody has enough and play that first red card. And so, anyway, it was fun, very fun. It takes about 20 minutes to play around 5 people.
Yeah.
So you just, if you're playing those quick hit games, you're sitting in an airport and you're not sure when you're going to be done. It's a fun game. Or for us, we were just, we played like 4 or 5 times. It was really fun.
Nice.
By the way, speaking about the movie Groundhog Day, it's funny how many movies were inspired by that movie.
Oh yeah.
And not a lot of them were necessarily good movies, but actually one that was is Edge of Tomorrow. Did you see it?
Edge of Tomorrow is great. Yeah, they keep asking those two if they're going to ever make an Edge of Tomorrow too. It was just I love that movie. And
just don't make a sequel that's terrible that you're just cashing in on, because the movie studios do that all the time, and it's like you had such a good thing, and it wouldn't have been that hard to make another good thing based on it, and you blew it.
Yeah, the same could not be said of Dune 2, though. Dune 2 is phenomenal. Love that movie.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was I didn't get it somehow.
The Dune Part 2?
Yeah.
Really? All right. Are you gonna watch Dune Part 3 when it comes out?
Look,
are they making a Part 3?
Yeah. Dune Messiah is happening.
Dune Messiah. Yeah. I tried to watch the prequel series, on Netflix.
Oh, that was
and I couldn't make it.
I haven't even tried.
The first.
Yeah, we went all the way through, but it's not great.
It wasn't great.
Nah. I'm a Dune freak, man. I love Dune. I read all the kids' books, all that.
I read the books years ago, and I loved them as well. I reread the book like a few years ago as well. So I really like the lore. It's just that for some reason, by the end of I had to be honest, I had like two problems with Dune 2. First of all, they deviated from the books.
Yeah.
And that was hard for me. And the second thing was kind of, well, what was the point of all this?
Yeah. I think that's where my wife came down on it too, but she hasn't read the books or anything.
Yeah. I think 3 will pay it off, because what both Denis and also Frank Herbert were trying to say was, don't fall in love with one of these kind of charismatic prophet types, right? That way lies doom, and so don't do that.
Yeah.
All right,
but
can I throw down some picks? I got 2.
Do it.
I think it can be real fast. So the first one is Ghost TTY. It's a replacement for the terminal on Mac. It's really good. It's really fast, and I think just recently they added support for shaders, so you can put in a custom shader. It can be really fun. I was playing around. I added like a Matrix, inspired shader. It was very cute. So that was really fun. I'm really enjoying Ghosty.
Is this a Mitchell Hashimoto project?
Yeah. Just got a lot of money.
I love that guy.
Chill out and make a terminal. And what was my second pick? Oh man, that was
so it's a replacement for iTerm and whatnot.
Yeah. I mean,
to be honest, I mostly run the terminal inside VS Code.
I'm with you. Yeah. So I've heavily altered my terminal with the prompt and all that sort of stuff. There's I'll make that my second pick. There's another thing that you can do called, I think it's like a transient prompt or something like that. I'll find it, but it's basically a switch where if you turn it on, then if you have one of those elaborate prompts that gives you like the path name and all that sort of stuff, what it'll do is as you enter a command and then go, it will essentially remove that. And so you don't see that in your history, just repeated over and over and over again. You just see command response, command response, and then your big ass prompt. And then, what you're currently working on. And at the moment that you hit enter, that big ass prompt will go away and you'll just see like LS or whatever it is you're doing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Transitive, transient, basically. Yeah. Essentially that. Yeah. Prompt.
And that's in Ghosty, or is that?
No, for me, that's in ZSH. So that's in the, yeah. Or, I don't know. It's ZSH. Yeah.
Yep.
And I use I think my Posh to go and do my prompt.
Yeah. I'm the same.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, Jack, if people want to connect with you, find you on the internet, watch any of your courses.
Interwebs.
They're in their web. Go through the tubes. Well, you can find me primarily on YouTube. That's a great spot to go and check out all my content. And then, of course, I'm on Blue Sky and X and LinkedIn.
Blue Collar Coder.
Yep.
Are you still using that moniker?
Kind of. I mean, I like the moniker, but actually, I was just throwing it around just recently. Like, should I get rid of it or what? And people are like, yeah, no, it's okay. But I mean, it's in like the banner graphics and stuff like that. But I don't really. It's not the name of the channel. But I think if you do Google for it, you will find it. Anyway, I'm also jaher.dev. That's whatever. Yeah, I'm around, and fairly easy to find.
I said it before. I'll say it again. Your stuff is awesome and everybody should be watching it. I've learned every time I watched one of your videos, I've learned something.
There you go. Thank you.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here.
It's been a real pleasure, guys. Thank you. It's been great to be back.
Yeah. Max out. Yeah, it's good to have you back. All right. Hang on for a second while we make sure the